Well, I'd read The Hellbound Heart, and I had worked with Clive for 10 years in the theatre, so I kind of knew very quickly what page Clive was on in relation to Pinhead. I guess what really jumped out at me, and I think this again goes back to the universality of what we were talking about, that there was such a huge difference in the language that Clive had used for the normal characters, the human characters, and the Cenobites, and in particular Pinhead. So for me, it was just wrapping my tongue around all those lines. I think would be it. I knew we were doing something good, and I knew we were doing something different. But if you'd ever suggested to me 6 a.m. in the back room at Cricklewood Production Village in North London, that 22 years later I'd be sitting here in the United States answering questions about this film, I would not have known what on earth you were talking about. I mean, I certainly saw none of this coming.
I think the honest answer to that for any actor is that you get the script and you flick through it and think, okay, where's my lines?
10 pages, I'm not...
Yeah, stop the story. Well, what about me?
Oh, here I am. I'll tell you something. Oh, I've got... Am I ever going to speak in this?
Really?
What do you mean my lips are sewn shut? What?
It's called line counting.
Yeah.
How many do you have? 10. Oh, I've got 13. You know, that,
And I had lines in the original script, but when they finally got round to shooting the first day with those lines, I had false dentures glued in my mouth, and all my lines were plosive, so there were P's and B's, and you can't say things with P's and B's if you can't get your lips together. So I was horrible, which isn't very scary really. So they took all my lines away that day again for female. So I just tore the script up.
It reminds me of the great interchange that's supposed to have taken place between Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. Christopher Lee was a bit pissed off when he saw the script for the first Frankenstein movie, that the creature didn't get to speak, and he was having a moan about this, and Peter Cushing said, "Count yourself lucky, dear boy, I've read the script." Yeah, well, you can imagine me reading the screenplay for Inferno when I first got that. 52, am I? Oh, here I am. Oh, I've gone again. 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Oh, I'm in, and it's the end. That was it.
That's also the way you watch the film. Where am I coming up? When am I coming up? Am I staying still there? Hopefully. Just the way they're reading those scripts, that's what you're looking for. Am I ever going to come up? What kind of a credit am I going to get?
How much is on the cutting room floor?
That's right.
So the back of my head again.
So Ashley, your character, even though it didn't have as much of a visual kind of draw as, say, the Cenobites did, your character
I had rockin' with Doc in hair.
Yeah, you totally did, dude. But your character was just as striking as any of them, and it's because there was this weird kind of underlying sexual tension between Pinhead and yourself, and you know, here you are, you're the final girl, and
Pardon?
you know, the final girl, the girl who's going to make it to the end of the
final
movie.
girl,
Yeah.
as opposed to the girl like who takes her top off. Tell me, is that you?
Oh no! If you took your top off, we would have known you'd been dead in the first half hour.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
we know that shit, right?
Really?
You can't
This
fool
isn't
us.
funny.
Oh look, tits dead.
Yeah.
So, what did you do to up your ante in order to be able to share the screen with such vivid characters and keep your character as vivid as they are?
I was really never on set with them because they were always in makeup. So it was usually a piece of masking tape, but it was Clive. You know, I understood why the character was there, and I understood why the character didn't want to be there. And I would ask him on a scale of 1 to 10, how upset, and he would always say 11. And after a while, it just becomes so real because we were doing very long days. And so 5 or 6 of those days were 12-hour days. And being in that mindset, it's like hair trigger at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, when you first opened the box, of course, there was the whole mischief thing. What is this? Is wondrous. But then,
oh, it wasn't. That was a little bit of like my precious. That was less like, oh, this is cool.
like the whole Gollum thing.
Yeah, right.
But then, as you went on, you knew that shit was going to hit the fan if you touched it again. You just kept going.
Well, I think because what was the alternative? You know, I think it was like the lesser of two evils, no pun intended. But yeah.
Now, speaking of evil, one of the most interesting scenes in the Hellraiser series is actually the scene that you shared with Clayton.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, because here you have the king of evil, and Doug was the goddamn king of evil, there's no question, right? And he finally confronts a priest. And, I mean, was there discussion on exactly how that, I mean, because here you have the soldier of God, and then you have you, evil, personified. I mean, was there discussion? Did you think about how that should play that type of scenario?
I had talked with Pete about it. What Pete was very consciously doing was having Pinhead at that point confronting spiritual law and brushing it aside. And then with the scene that had immediately preceded it, confronting temporal law, with the police on the streets and brushing them on one side. Pete had written a great confrontation between Pinhead and the chief police guy on the streets, which unfortunately Tony Hickox decided not to film, in which Pinhead used the policeman's own handcuff to rip his tongue out, to shut him up. There have been whispers, I believe, that there was unhappiness from the fundamentalists in North Carolina, which, like all the southern states, claims to be the buckle in the Bible Belt, and having a movie being shot in North Carolina with hell in the title, not once but twice. So I was absolutely hopped and jazzed to do this scene, because I'm directly blaspheming, because I'm mock crucifying myself and quoting Jesus' words when he's dying on the cross. I am the way. No, he doesn't say it on the cross. Anyway, blaspheming, certainly anyway. And then force-feeding flesh. I'll tell that story in a second. Quoting the words of the Catholic Mass. So I'm thinking, this is great. We're going to have the fundamentalists and the Catholics picketing this movie when it gets released. And I was really disappointed because there was not a murmur. And I was so looking forward to taking them on. It didn't happen. So I have to feed my flesh to Clayton, who will now tell you what they brought to set for him to eat.